everybody. Welcome to Olympic Minds Leadership Beyond Limits. This is a podcast for the leader of leaders, the visionary of visionaries. This is for leaders who want to go from mediocrity to mastery and from success into significance. This is not theory-based. What you're going to listen to today is heart-tested, results-driven, and proven, right? And proven material that's going to work for you and to help you build your legacy. I'm Sherry Winn, your podcast host, two-time Olympian, national championship basketball coach, author of 5 leadership books, and CEO of the Winning Leadership Company. Today we get to talk to a very special person. I'm so excited about this. I can't even contain my excitement. I already told him that I've been sitting in his energy, and just by sitting in his energy, I feel better already. So this is Brian Bogert. He is an entrepreneur. He's an author, a speaker, and he has a very special program, the creator of Waste to Wealth. So I'm gonna let Brian tell you a little bit more about himself. But before I do, I want to say one more thing. Look, I met this guy maybe a year ago, and I was able to be on his podcast. And the thing that I took away was just such a great feeling. When you meet people that energize you, that you seek the light in, that you feel the light, you feel the love, this is that guy. So stay tuned, get ready. This is going to be phenomenal. Okay, Brian, tell people a little bit more about yourself.
Well, Sherry, I just have to reflect back to you that I am so grateful for you in my life. And you are somebody that I also glean and take energy from, but it feeds itself and each other. And I just am so grateful that I know you and that we've had the ability to build the relationship that we have thus far. And I'm counting down the days until I actually get to meet you in person and give you a giant big hug, because that'll be the day.
That is the day.
But to answer, yeah, it's going to be hopefully great and hopefully soon. But to answer the question, right, I always start by saying that I'm a husband and father first. And the reason I start with that is because though I've said that for 20 years, my words, actions, and behaviors were not always congruent. And so it's a way that I not only introduce myself, but it's a way that I ground myself in accountability, because today and for the last period in my life, it absolutely has been congruent, and they're the only thing binary in my world. Now, beyond that, there's a lot of things that I do in the world, but who am I? I'm deeply interested in the human experience. I've studied human connection, human performance, human behavior for 20 to 25 years. I've had lots of success in the external measurement way in businesses and found myself completely empty inside on the other side of it. And I am somebody that is known probably most for a singular story, even though there's many things that I have now become known for in ways that I have helped create movement for folks in the world. But that grounds us in the very beginning of this journey, not the entire journey, but the beginning of it, and not necessarily the transformation story, but frankly, a story that created a bunch of trash from my past that I didn't realize for 20 to 25 years. I pushed through and I pushed down. And what is that story? When I was 7, I was run over by a truck and my left arm was completely severed from my body. It was reattached. I had 24 surgeries, years of adversity and struggle, as I'm sure you can imagine. And I'm sure we'll unpack components of that as we go. But the big piece that I always slow down and say is that although I recognize after all these years how unique my story is, it's impossible to do what I do, speaking in front of tens of thousands of people every single year, coaching thousands of people every single year, and also not recognizing that every single one of you listening also has a unique story. And what becomes important for each and every one of us is that we learn to pause long enough to become aware of the lessons we can extract from our own stories, so that we can move those to a place of understanding, so that we can become intentional with how we choose to live with those lessons moving forward. And we all have the ability to do that. We also all have the ability to tap into the collective wisdom of other people's stories to shorten our own curve to learning. And that's what I'm here with you to do today, is to hopefully help glean some wisdom that others can learn and grow from. And I know that that's how you live your life. And the reason you're doing this show is to allow so many others to tap into the incredible human beings that you have access to, in hopes that they shorten their own curve to learning as well. So Sherry, I'm super excited to jump in with you.
So let's go backwards. So, I know where you are today, and I know who you are today, and you're the true representative of love and light. This is what we need in the world. We need people who have done the work to really get to this place that you can tap into their energy, you feel their energy, and you know that that is the energy that needs to be in this world, right? We're divisive, we're polarized, all this stuff. But let's go back to the moment you started recognizing, this is not it. I'm living this life. It feels like lies. It feels unreal. It doesn't feel like I'm living in my purpose. It doesn't feel like I'm being authentic to my being. So where did you start that? What was the moment you recognized that? And then tell us a little about that story to move yourself forward.
Yeah. I think that there was an acknowledgement and understanding that that was true for a very long time. But honestly, I lived blind for 20 to 25 years. Right. And I can unpack, and we may do this in a different portion of the question, really what caused me to start to retreat in a place where I became so unconscious. But probably one of the beginning moments where I realized that something wasn't in line, though it was still many years before I started to really kind of create the redirection around it, was actually when I was 20 and I had a snowboarding accident. And I went down and I re-broke my left arm, and I knew instantly that it was broken, and I was in a different state where I didn't have family or the medical records at the time that could support what needed to happen. And so I had to care for myself in a moment when it was pretty critical. Ended up getting on a helicopter and transporting me to a different place so that I could be okay. But that was the beginning of a 10-month window in my life that started to change everything. And why do I say that? Because for a lot of things that happened earlier in my life, I had this narrative. I believed that if you had a good, solid mindset, that you could do anything. And that's true to a degree, but it's only partial truth. But what was my mindset? Brian's good, Brian's strong, Brian's capable, Brian can do anything himself. And now I'm in a situation as an adult without all the support of my family helping me relearn to do things, to have access or button my pants or shower with one arm. And I had 10 months with my arm hanging by my side. Why? Because even though it was a compound fracture and traditional treatment would have been surgery instantly, I went through 7 surgeons who were afraid to touch me because of medical malpractice. Why? Because the structure of my arm is completely different. I don't have a bicep. It's my gracilis from my leg that allows me to bend my arm. I don't have a tricep. My nerves, my veins, everything was mishmashed together from the spare parts bin that we call our bodies, right? But in those 10 months, going through 7 surgeons with my arm still broken, hanging by my side with the risk of it, clipping a nerve, clipping a vein, losing it at any point in that 10 months, I slipped into a really deep depression. Probably the deepest and darkest depression I'd ever been in as an adult. And I found myself getting resentful and frustrated and angry because I was surrounded by people that I had done things with, done things for, shown up for, like really gone to bat for. And now all of a sudden I'm feeling completely isolated and alone. And most of this resentment, frustration, and anger was being directed towards all these people that I believed should have been there for me. Right? Now I had to swallow and accept the reality of the fact that they just bought into the power of my narrative. Now, they also added a 5th one to that. So it's not just Brian Goods, Brian's strong, Brian's capable, Brian can do everything himself. But, Brian will ask for help if he needs it. And yet this was a time in my life that I didn't have the courage, nor did I have the skill set to know how to ask for help. So I transitioned that next period of my life, which still proved to be relatively empty, that I'm sure we'll talk about or we won't. But I leaned into what I was looking at as the glue that bound human connection at the time, which was vulnerability and authenticity. And I started to get really good at sharing just enough about myself, asking just enough questions to get someone else comfortable so they could lower their armor and I could drive a Mack truck through and help them with their problems instead of still focusing on my own. But still in this effort and attempt to get back to the core of who I was and to feel connected at a deep level. And yet it still was pretty fleeting. That was one of many moments that started to shape this idea that maybe I really wasn't living in congruence to who I was. Maybe as much as I was performing on the outside, as much as I was accomplishing on the outside of all these things that I was doing, right, it also really kept me disconnected in a lot of ways. Right. And I know we'll go deeper into some of that, but that was one of the first times that I kind of had a wake-up moment and realized maybe just maybe I'm not living as clearly as I thought I was.
Right, and sometimes it takes a massive incident, right? I mean, and some people take these challenges, these life challenges, they call them life disruptions or life quakes. They take these things and all of a sudden they freak out. Like, this is horrible, this is bad, this is the end of the world, the sky is falling, the whole thing. And I think that it is the most exciting time in your life because it's such an opportunity for change. Because a lot of the times we don't get there unless we have that big boom, right? That big thing, the house falling down on top of us, what are you going to call it? Yeah. We need that moment because that's the moment when we can start opening. And so what you opened to was vulnerability. And I love that you opened with that. So many of us are protecting ourselves so deeply. We're afraid that if we come out as ourselves, that people won't like us, they won't love us. Yep. And yet that's the point where they actually that's the point where people can love us, because before we were protecting ourselves so much, there were so many layers to dig through that people didn't even know what existed. So as you started your practice of vulnerability, what was your next level of that? So you started out, you knew that you needed to be vulnerable, but yet when you got to the opportunity to ask for help, you gave help, right? Instead of asking.
Yeah.
So what propelled you to the ability to then see how courageous it truly is to be vulnerable?
Well, I think that my vulnerability came in layers over time, right? Just like the armor that we carry, that we shed in layers to get back to the core of who we are, right? I think that we learn and understand through experience. And so in those early years, it really truly was more of an intellectual practice. And what do I mean by that? Well, I knew intellectually that I needed to be vulnerable. I knew I needed to open up and share certain things. And I didn't really have a big problem being authentic. However, authentic also was covered by a mask and armor itself. I just didn't know it, right? And so the first kind of turning point that allowed me to start to realize that the layers that I'd created to take this deeper were maybe not serving me was about 27. And this was after 7 years of living with this concept of vulnerability and authenticity. But I didn't have a healthy model for chasing who I was. What I had was a healthy model for chasing what I wanted in this world. Yeah. What house, what car, what amount of money. And by age 27, I had all of it. I had a beautiful wife, I had the cars, I had the house, I had the money, I had beautiful kids on the way. Our business at the time was $10 million and growing. My bank account was full and I found myself empty still. And that was when I started to do more inner work, and I hired my first coach to help me start to understand these things. But the reason I share that and that pinnacle and that timeline is because I started at 27 to discover the shame and how it was starting to dictate my life, my actions, my behaviors, how it was running and ruling my business. And I was maybe mildly aware of some of the anger that maybe was a manifestation of that shame that I just didn't know. But again, it was still very intellectual in process. And I've said it more than once already in our conversation that intellectual or mindset alone is only part of the equation. Fast forward 5 more years, I was 32 years old, and I had a moment with my daughter. She was 2 at the time. We'd been playing, we were laughing, we were having fun, and we lay down on the couch, and she wraps her arm around my neck, and she kisses me on the cheek, and she says, "I love you, Dada." And I broke down in tears. And I say that with absolute clarity because 1, I had never cried tears of joy, happiness, love, and fulfillment. And 2, even though I believe that men crying is a sign of strength, I conditioned tears out of myself years ago. Right. And so now when I'm crying in this moment of just absolute bliss and beauty, it also allowed me to realize that everything else I'd ever felt, emotion, was pale in comparison.
Yeah.
And this is where it started to ground me a little bit further because I said vulnerability and authenticity, the glue that binds human connection. But human connection without emotion is not human connection. See, when I shut off physical pain, when it exceeded my ability to cope, I also shut off mental pain, spiritual pain, emotional pain, and physical pain for 25 years and didn't realize it.
Right.
And to the point of where you started to understand these areas that we protect ourselves, I have a whole framework and concept that I'm happy to share after this next piece if it's relevant, because it really started to help me realize how much when we protect ourselves, we disconnect ourselves. And it showed up for me in my home with my wife. Right. She'd ask a simple question like this: "Hey, honey, what do you want to do with the kids this weekend?" But my shame and my anger filter would cause me to hear it this way: "Hey, honey, you've not done enough to be a good husband and father here recently, so what are you going to do to make up for it this weekend?" Well, you better damn well believe I'm going to protect the shit out of that because I'm a good husband. I'm a great father. And I can't believe you're challenging me. And so what do? I rattle off the 10 things I've done in the last few days to show her I'm a good husband and father. And that wasn't even what she asked. Now, all of a sudden, I've created damage, which is going to take more energy for each of us to neutralize and diffuse what didn't even need to happen had I been able to hear her correctly. And that was when I started to really break down that the world will never judge you based on your intent. The world will only ever judge you based on what your words, actions, and behaviors communicate, whether you're conscious to it or not. And that's when I started to unravel this layer or deeper layers of protection that were still keeping me highly disconnected, despite the fact that intellectually I had understanding of the things I needed to do. I wasn't able to be that for many more years.
Oh, that's really hard. I think that we you know, I know you know my story about chronic pain and going in and working through it and not understanding that the pain was not just physical. There was a mental, emotional, and spiritual, right? And so as an athlete, I viewed everything as physical,
Bingo.
And the idea that the pain could also be emotional was just is outside of my realm of thinking. And I would go back into these therapists and we would work again. And they go, let's talk about, I'm like, I'm not talking about anything emotional. Like, I'm shutting down. This is physical. It's physical pain. Do the physical thing to help me get out of the fit, And so it was a long time. Like, I'm not a quick learner, obviously. It was about 7 years of doing this before I came to the realization there was a connection. And I think that's what we do to ourselves is we compartmentalize certain aspects. We hide things from ourselves. We think we're hiding them from ourselves, right? We pretend like they don't exist. So we put them over here in this box and put them in this box. Yep. And pretty soon we wake up and we don't have an emotion anymore, right? We don't know what that feels like. We don't have an idea of what it feels like. And so my thing, Brian, was I'm going to protect my heart. And so I was I'm so proud, and nobody's going to hurt my heart again. And they gently pointed out to me, when you put a wall around your heart, that means nothing gets in.
That's right.
So similar to that moment you're talking about being there with your child and you start to cry, it takes a lot of work to understand that when you protect yourself, which is a crazy idea to begin with, but when you protect yourself from pain, from the heart hurting, you're also shutting out every other possibility as well. So now you're tapping into this idea of you, like you're really getting into understanding more about you. So where did that deepen? Where did that idea, I know you talked about you hired coaches and you got there, but what was it that really turned your mind around this concept that we're more than the physical body? There's so much more to us. Where did that come from?
So I would suggest that in that same period of time, I was starting to lean into more alternative forms of healing, right? I was dabbling with Reiki energy healing. I was doing some of the, chakra type work with energy healers and chiropractors that could, do the arm thing where it's like you put an idea in and the resistance that comes up. I was doing neurofeedback. I was, to your point, trying to approach all this physical pain that I had developed in my life because my body is, by virtue, a disaster. I mean, medically and scientifically today, it's still very broken in many ways because the other side of it is that I also felt the need to prove in another form of protection all the things that I could do that everyone else told me I couldn't. Things that I really, looking back, was not wise in terms of the damage that I did on my body, but it was still out of this effort to prove and protect what I was capable of because I didn't want to be confined into a box. And so each one of these things started to open up deeper layers. But I'll tell you the thing that really rocked it more than anything. And it caused me to have to go inward in a way that I didn't see coming, I didn't anticipate. And it was a conversation with my wife on our back patio. It was in a place where I would have told you we were in the best place in our marriage that we'd ever been. And that would have been true. That was not a lie. However, there also was patterns that we'd created that we both brought into the relationship and that we doubled down on and created with each other. And it went from being in the best place in my marriage that I thought we would ever be to me facing not knowing whether or not I'd be married for another 30 days. Wow. And it was because of the way my anger was coming out in the house. See, you talked about it early on with my energy. I have a giant energy. And I have an ability to infuse life into people, right? I have a lot of gifts that have been given to me, but you flip those same gifts on the other side and I can cut somebody equally to the core with just a look, a tone, and energy. And though I was never physically or of any place consciously emotionally abusive in my life or to my wife or my kids, I wasn't verbally abusive. What also lacked a great deal was emotional safety in the home. And I had to make a decision in that moment. Do I listen, hear what she's saying, the same thing she's been trying to tell me for 10 years that I still am not hearing and accepting? Do I respond or do I react to it like I have in so many other situations and guarantee I won't be married another 30 days from now? I handed everything over to my wife that day, my phone, my computers, asked her to clear my calendar for 10 days, and I went inward to actually do some of the work that needed to be done. And I started asking questions that I hadn't asked before because I didn't know I needed to. But that's where I started to really start to unravel this concept of protection and connection, right? Because in that time, not only was I able to surface things that I was still protecting emotionally that I was unaware of, that were still causing pain internally, But
Right.
I had to really sit back and understand where were all these disconnects in communication coming from, right? Because it was happening still frequently, and I'm just having to bite my tongue and eat shit for months because I told my wife I wasn't going to have the negative effects of anger affect our house as a result of me again. And I knew I was human, and I knew I would. And over the next 18 months, it happened 3 or 4 times. But so many times, I'm biting my tongue and just swallowing my pride and still not understanding how is this disconnect still taking place.
Right.
See, I think we all seek and desire 4 things. We all want to feel safe. We all want to feel protected, and they are not the same thing. We all want to feel seen and understood, and we all want to feel connected at the deepest level. These last 2 are the 2 we want the most, but they do not happen unless the first 2 do. So, if you imagine a 35-gallon black trash bag, this whole concept of the trash from our past and starting to understand the waste and how it shows up in our world to transform it into wealth. Unfold a 35-gallon black trash bag, flat, don't put air in it, and you lift it up over in front of your face. It's hanging now in front of your face. Now imagine this armor that you're carrying in front of you. Now the question becomes, how could you properly expect anyone to see who you are, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, your heart, your intent, your souls, your value, your boundaries, your value, your worth, delivered through this opaque force field? Now, you may not even realize that it's happening, but the second that you don't feel safe and protected, it could be a networking event where you're handing out business cards and everybody wants something from you instead of for you. It could be going back to your family's house for the holidays and your dad, your aunt, and your grandma always make you feel a certain way, and weeks out, you're anticipating it and starting to block and plan, how do I redirect and avoid? By the way, that's all armor, right? It could be your spouse looking at you when something happened in the dishwasher, and it had nothing to do with your spouse and everything to do with how your dad looked at you when you loaded the dishwasher incorrectly when you were 7. The reality of it is we carry cellular memory mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. So the second we don't feel safe, whether it's real to what's in front of us or a cell is being triggered because of a memory or a root memory or a source that took place, our armor goes up, Fort Knox thick. Now, I told you, how can we properly expect anybody to see who we are, what we're willing to do, what we're not willing to do through this? But that's also assuming that they're not carrying their own armor that's going to further dilute the message.
Right.
And so I had to really start to break down this idea of the world will never judge you based on your intent. They'll only ever judge you based on what your words, actions, and behaviors communicate. Right? Again, I told you what my wife said. I told you what I heard. Not what she said, but that's what I was reacting to. Not truth, not with what was taking place in front of me. And that's what happens all the time in this world. And so for me, I had to start to be able to understand, okay, how do I become a protector and a connector? What do I mean by that? It means that I can be the thermostat instead of the thermometer in any room I walk into. But it requires a higher level of awareness and a higher level of ownership within myself. So if I walk in and I realize that I'm protected, I've already lost. Because the second you protect yourself, you guarantee you will disconnect yourself from the 2 things you want most, to be seen and understood and connected at the deepest level. And by virtue of what you said earlier, the second you protect yourself, you guarantee you will disconnect yourself from who you are and what you want. So to become a protector and a connector, it means having a strong spine and a soft front. A strong spine is, I've done the work. I've looked inside. I've gotten to the source, not just intellectually, but I've actually done the work to know who I am, what I'm willing to do, what I'm not willing to do, my heart, my intent, my soul, my boundaries, my value, my worth, so that I can be unwavering in any environment. It's kind of like the last rap battle in the movie 8 Mile. When Eminem's like, yeah, I did grow up from across the tracks. Yeah, my buddy did shoot himself. And then he drops the mic because his competition has nothing on him. See, when you can get yourself to a place of not having to have anything to justify, protect, or defend about who you are, that's when freedom exists. But that's how you can lower the armor. So then I think about the soft front. My wife and kids want to come to me for light, love, leadership, laughter. Do they want to lay their head down on a metal chest piece of armor? No. They want to feel my heartbeat. They want to feel my rhythm. And so whether it's love, whether it's income, whether it's connection, whether it's anything, the reality of it is the second we protect, we guarantee we're disconnecting from whatever it is we want, whoever it is that we want to connect with. And so our first job is to be able to start to be able to recognize that. And so I developed 3 questions that I used to use and I teach other people today. When I ask anybody, do you know what it's like to get triggered for your armor to go up? Almost everybody's like, oh yeah. How quickly do you know? Instantly. Yep. But then the gap between knowing and doing something is huge for most people.
Absolutely.
To me, the second that armor goes up, ask yourself 3 questions. Is what I'm reacting to right now due to what's right in front of me or the trash from my past? Little secret, 99% of the time, it's the second, even if you don't know what it is. Right? The second question is, what am I protecting right now? Because if you can understand what you're protecting in the first place, you can make a choice to lower it until you've gotten to the source to remove it. What was I protecting with my wife? The fact that I'm a great husband and father, and I thought she was challenging that. She's trying to tell me that I'm not doing enough. When I'm kicking my butt to do everything to provide for this family, I can't believe she's challenging me. Again, not what she said, but that's what I was protecting. So if I can remove that and understand that in the moment, I'm free also. The last question is, if you've not been able to separate and open yourself after this in any given moment, it's to actually say, am I safe right now? Am I safe mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally? If you can look around and say yes to that question, it's up to you to take a deep breath and do whatever you can to open yourself, because the second that armor is there, growth and opportunity go out the window.
Yeah, we spend a lot of time in the past, right? In fact, we have no neutral thoughts. There's no thought that we have that's neutral. Most of our thoughts are from the past. So if I were to look around the room right now and I were to look at, there's a plant over there. The first thing I start thinking was, oh, that plant needs to be watered. It hasn't been watered enough. It's too dry. Where does all that come from? That's not the current, it's from the past, right? If I look at a picture, I go, oh my gosh, I'm too fat in the picture. Where does that come from? That comes from the past, right? So there's no, we don't have any neutral thoughts, which means we always get the opportunity to decide
Bingo.
Where we're going to take the thought, right? And if we understand that most of the thoughts are based on the past, like everything that we're thinking currently, it couldn't be existing if we didn't have some sort of reference to it that comes from the past, right? So when we start dissecting that and we start understanding we're living far too much in the past, which is already gone and there's nothing we can do to change it. It's already gone.
Yep.
And if we can only live in the present, and if we understand the present moment, like you said, we're safe. Like nobody's touching you, nobody's hurting you, nobody's harming you. It's the thoughts that are there that are harming us. And so, one of the things that I've been studying, I don't know if you've read Course in Miracles, but one of the things I've been studying is a book called A Course in Miracles. I read this every time I would read a Wayne Dyer book. Every time I would read another, spiritual book, it'd be like Course in Miracles. They referenced it. And so I thought, well, I need to look at this. And lesson 34 says this: I cannot be a victim of this world because I created it.
Bingo.
Isn't that amazing? Because you look around and we always blame other people, outside events and circumstances for why we are who we are. You're creating it consistently.
Yep.
Every single day you're bringing the past into the moment, and we're getting triggered by things that are not really there. And if we just start by understanding we have far more power than we could ever imagine. Most of us work powerless throughout our lives, right? Mm-hmm. So what are some of the things? I know that you've done so much work, like you've had spiritual coaches, you've had business coaches, you've had, I don't know how many coaches, I'm sure you've had a ton of them. What has been the single biggest thing that's given you power back into your life?
So it's a combination of things, and it's going to seem a little cliche, but it's absolutely the truth. It's about having done the work to really create a level of discernment with all of the awareness that I've been able to raise, to recognize the pieces that really are me, the pieces that I can influence, the pieces that I can adopt, that I can own, that I can move. I refuse to be a victim. And I think some of that roots back to my early days of feeling sorry for myself and recognizing that there were kids in the hospital beds next to me in the ICU that had terminal illnesses and didn't know if they'd live for another 30 days. And so early on in my life, I decided that I was no longer going to get stuck by the things that had happened to me, but instead get moved by what I could do with them. But what I also recognize and know is that through all of that, it built this performance arc where I learned to receive love, validation, and connection through performance, which meant it was always contingent upon what I did instead of who I was. And so if I look at everything, it was the biggest shift was actually not just awareness in all the ways that I should be judging myself, but awareness in a way that's actionable, that I can use in a future-focused and objective perspective to make new choices, to make new actions, take new actions, and therefore get different ideas and feedback. I've said for years that I'm only as good as my questions. I didn't really realize for a long time why that was so important to me until recently, frankly. And here's the interesting part. 60% plus people, when I was a little kid, would just stare. They'd never ask. Writing my story for me without ever giving me a chance to write it for myself. Of the percentage of people that finally asked a question, the majority of them, after they picked their jaws up off the ground when I told them I was run over by a truck and my left arm was torn off, would turn to my parents for validation, which told me what? They didn't believe me. Wow. They didn't believe my truth that I'm standing in, that I'm wearing on my body, and they don't believe me. right? And then those same people would view me through their lens of what they'd be capable of in my situation, immediately telling me all the things I was and wasn't going to be able to do. And so the shift to return back to who I am versus what I do in the world, and to recognize that who I am has value in and of itself, and exponentially more value than anything I could do or what I could deliver. It's been that journey of reconnecting my head to my heart and living in congruence intellectually and emotionally with who I am, not who the world told me who to be. Right. And I realized that sounds cliche, but it also wasn't a singular moment. To your point, I have invested significantly in healing, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And the one number that I will flex today, because I'm not a big believer in flexing numbers, right? Even though I have plenty I could flex, is that I've invested over $1 million in coaching in myself in the last 13 years. Yeah. It's been the greatest returns I've ever gotten from any investment I've ever made. And it's opened me to so much more. But of all of these things, it was the breakthroughs with my wife that allowed us to find, honor, and love who each other were through this process that also allowed it to ground in my life. My wife and I have been together for 19 years now. I like to say that we hid from each other unconsciously for 14, and she's only felt emotionally safe with me for about 3.
Stayed with you, which is there's some connection there for the two of you. There was something that you were willing to work through, stay together, and then finally figure out like what true love really was.
Correct, but it starts with loving yourself enough to be able to allow others to love you, or to even open up to the reality that someone loves you for who you are, despite all of the what's that you've done to hurt them. Yeah. See, what you just said is also real. I mean, there were periods of time when I used to even think to myself, and this is something that I don't carry shame about anymore. I say it. I'm not proud that it's what happened, but it is what happened. There were moments when I used to believe my wife was weak. There is not a chance in hell that she put up with me in the forms that I was in for well over a decade, and she could be anything other than one of the strongest humans on this planet. But it took me a long time to be able to understand and recognize this. But by the way, 3 years of emotional safety, it's also not a coincidence that we have the best relationship, the deepest connection, the best communication, the deepest level of intimacy, and I don't just mean that sexually. We reversed generational patterns in the home. My kids don't even remember having an angry father anymore. And it's also been the greatest amount of freedom I've been able to create for myself in every single way, because if I'm still protecting myself from the one person that I love and adore the most, that I want to see every part of me without any need for judgment or criticism, if I can't love myself enough to open up to her to do so, how could I do it with anyone else?
Absolutely. I think that's the biggest challenge we have ever, is that journey of unconditional self-love. And I'm not there. Like, I still judge myself. I can still hear the language that I use. As you know, I've had a health journey for a long time. And I would get mad because I would, hire these people. They were healers, and they had healed all these people of cancer and everything else. And then they work with me. I'm like, you didn't do it. You didn't. Yeah. I was like, what is blocking me? Help me. But the truth is like, when I started listening to my internal self-talk just recently, like this is, and you and I have both been on a personal development journey for years and decades, right? This is not something that all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just started this. No, This is something that decades of learning. And I started listening to the language. So it was like, oh, my back hurts again. Oh, golly, I wish that I wouldn't have this pain. This sucks. This is unfair. I can't believe that I have to go this. Why would it be? And I'm listening to all this barrage. And I didn't even know I was doing it. Like, I literally did not know that consistently throughout the day I was having this thing. And so I've really consciously been aware of, number one, when I wake up, my body's a miracle. It's a miracle. Like, it's still working. After everything that's happened, it's still working. I don't have to think about my blood pumping. I don't have to think about my liver, getting rid of toxins. I can't think about my heart, doing what it does every single day to keep me breathing, keep my lungs, my heart. And so I start with like the idea that I'm a miracle. Yeah. I'm a miracle. Like, if I start with that, and then throughout the day, I'll hear this judgment come in, like this little thing. And so I've really spent time when it comes in, and it's often, like I could even be talking to somebody and judgment comes, boom. And I go, if I can't do anything else with that moment, there's 4 things that comes from Ho'oponopono that I just say. I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, I love you. And I just say those 4 things really quickly, like it didn't take long. And all it does is shift energy. very quickly. It shifts the energy into more positivity. And if I don't have time to take care of it, that's all I do. But it's amazing that like I said, the unconditional love part.
Yeah.
We beat ourselves up all day long, and they would expect other people to love us when we're not fully in love with ourselves.
And here's the reality. You said, I'm not there yet, but you're as far along as you can be in this moment.
Absolutely.
Right. And so, that's the same with me. But the other flip side to this is there is no final destination. Yeah. There's only constant evolution of self. Because why? When I say there's cellular memory in these things, we can get to the source and heal them and rewrite the narratives and rewrite the patterns. And yet a stimulus could still put us back in that same place that caused it in the first place. The difference is how much time do you spend in it and how much damage does it create as a result? Right. I lived for months and years of my life in shame and anger. And then it was weeks and months, and then it was days and weeks, and then it was hours and days, and then it was minutes and hours. And most of the time now, it's minutes and moments, just like you said. I still fall into shame patterns. I still have reactionary moments where I feel anger. Have I eradicated the majority of it in a way that it does not affect my life or create damage? Yes. Is it still a part of me, and will it be until the day I die? Yes. So it takes constant and vigilant effort, because it also goes to this other side of it, right? I've been asked this before, and for a long time I couldn't answer it in the way that I choose to answer it today. Why? Because I was so concerned about what someone else would say. But people would ask me, because I've done a lot of work, and I've done a lot of work for a long time, and I do have a high level of awareness, and I do seem to be able to communicate things in a way that makes it accessible to other people. And so therefore people can very easily almost put me on a pedestal as if it's, oh man, he's got this all figured out. I'm human like the rest of us. I make mistakes every day. But the question was this, and I've been asked this so many times, and it took me a long time to be able to really own my answer. Brian, do you consider yourself self-actualized? Now, the shame pattern in me wanted to say no. Why? Because the top side of shame is what got me more often than not. It wasn't the bottom, which was, you're not good enough, you're not worthy. It's when I shut that down, I go to the arena and I do something major. It's, who the fuck do you think you are? Who do you think you are to do that special thing? Who do you think you are to go coach and help other people? Who do you think you are to build successful businesses, right? So immediately I'm checked on this top side, but with just this question, are you self-actualized? Well, if I say yes, then I'm clearly arrogant and entitled and all these things, right? But here's the truth of the matter, Sherry. I now say I'm as self-actualized as I can be in this moment.
Right.
I can confidently look at you and tell you, because I know how I live my life, that every stone that I've seen, I've turned over. Now, does that mean that everything underneath that stone has been fixed? No, but I'm as actualized and aware of it as I can be in this moment. But 5 minutes from now, 5 days from now, 5 years from now, I better not be the same place I am today.
Right.
Because new stuff comes at us. But it's also the same journey that you're discussing right now. By the way, I told you the 3 years that my wife's felt emotional safety with me. It's also not a coincidence that I've been out of physical pain for 2.5 years. Wow. To your point on the manifestation of other things, I've done everything physically I could do to heal my body.
Yep.
The pain, and when it went away, I remember the exact day that it went away. It was the deepest level of congruence, alignment, and healing that I'd ever accomplished in my life. And the majority of the physical pain was a manifestation of emotional pain that I either didn't have the courage to find and stand in and heal through, or I was just completely unconscious to. And there is so much freedom on the other side of not having to have anything to justify, protect, or defend about who I am. That doesn't mean that everything I do is right. That doesn't mean that I even give a shit about being right, but I do care about getting it right. And that's something I commit to every day.
Mm-hmm. So Brian, this has been so phenomenal. I mean, people are going to have to listen to this 5 times to get everything you said, right? This is the type of podcast you need to listen to, write it down, think about it, reflect on it. So if there's one thing that you want to leave the audience with today, what is something that you want to share with them that we haven't talked about, or maybe something that you want to reiterate at a deeper level for the audience?
One of the things that I've really been focusing on a lot recently, and I think it's going to support our entire conversation. Look, the world is moving faster than we are at this moment. I mean, the ground is literally shaking beneath us. And with the development of AI and all of the ways that people are now utilizing it to try to build a brand, build messaging, build components, there's also a ton of dilution that's taking place in the marketplace and a whole lot of people that are blending into the crowd. Why? Because I don't think as many people recognize that our voice, your voice, is your greatest asset. Your voice, especially in today's world, is one of the only ways that you can distinguish yourself, that you can position yourself with unique value, that you yourself are the only one who can tell the stories the way you tell them, independent of handing over the pen to anybody else. And so I handed over the pen of writing my story for my life to people and other places for too long. But now what's happening is people, for the sake of speed and efficiency, are broadcasting and amplifying a message, but most of the time it's in the wrong direction from who they are. And it's happening at a speed and an amplitude that we've never even imagined. And there's way more chaos as a result of it. And so do yourself a favor and ask yourself questions to get clear in who you are and your voice. Because if you hand it over to anybody else, you dilute your value, you dilute your impact, you dilute everything that you've ever wanted to build as a result of utilizing your voice. Or especially those of us who learn to quiet our voice or make them small at different periods of time. So I'm going to give you a really simple exercise. Everybody who's listening to this, to get more calibrated into who you are, your voice, and the things energetically that light you up or don't. I want you to make 2 lists. On one list, I want you to write down all the people, places, sources of information, environments, things that you consume, do, or go that leave you feeling uplifted, that bring you light, bring you energy, bring you connection, that you could be there for 8 to 10 hours and it felt like 1 because you're in flow and you can't wait to get back to see those people, be in those places and do those things. Everybody knows what that feels like. Very few people really honor that. The second list is a counter list. All the people, places, sources of information, environments, places you go, do, think that make you feeling defeated, unworthy, disconnected. That you could spend 1 hour and it feels like 8 because you're slamming your head against the wall and you don't want to see those people, do those things, and be in those places. Even if you don't go through the process of actioning those lists, all I'm asking each and every one of you is to bring a level of awareness to where you are spending your time, energy, and using your voice today. Because more often than not, I see people spending more time, energy, and resources on the negative side of that list than on the positive. And if you make one change, which is just to honor the things that lift you up and bring you light and start to systematically reduce, refine, remove the things that don't serve you anymore, you will already be clearer in your voice and live a more free life. And so for that, I just want everybody to understand the value. Each and every one of your voices has value. It's where your impact and your uniqueness lives. Don't hand it over to anybody or any tool.
So beautiful. So beautiful. So many things. I mean, you can find and follow Brian. I know he's on Instagram a lot. And I'm assuming, I don't do TikTok, but I'm assuming you're on TikTok a lot.
I'm not, actually. I mean, I'm on there, but I haven't posted on there in over 2 years. Yeah.
So Instagram is your place.
Yeah.
Instagram is your place.
I would say all things social media. I'm at Bogert Brian on all channels. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Those are the primary.
Right. So I would just add this, folks, like, listen, this is one of those podcasts that will change your life. This is something that you need to understand. He's just giving you the keys, the things that will move you, right? We talked about earlier from mediocrity to mastery, and that's mastery of you. We talked about from moving from success to significance. That's what Brian just explained to you. Please, please, please share this video, because this is something that is life-changing to leaders who are out there, who people are out there, to your friends, to your family, to whoever. So please share this. And I just want to, with deepest gratitude, thank you, Brian, for joining me today. I'm so blessed by your presence. I'm so blessed by your words. And thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hey, everybody, have a winning day. Come back again. And please share this with people. I know that this is life-changing. Share, share, share. Have a winning day. Bye now.